Welcome back in your Thursday morning. This morning, we are taking an in-depth look at those riots that erupted in the nation's capital yesterday. Thousands of Trump supporters initially protesting the outcome of the election peacefully, then storming the Capitol building in an act of violence that the country hasn't seen in more than 200 years. This morning, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle condemning these riots. That includes soon-to-be Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. Listen.
Those who perform these reprehensible acts cannot be called protesters. No, these were rioters and insurrectionists, goons and thugs, domestic terrorists. They do not represent America. They were a few thousand violent extremists who tried to take over the Capitol building and attack our democracy. They must and should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
Schumer also blamed President Trump's rhetoric for inciting the violence. So this morning, we're breaking down everything that happened and where the nation goes from here. We're joined live now by our Washington correspondent, Joe St. George. Joe, good morning to you. What are things looking like in the nation's capital right now?
You know, it's calm, but to be quite honest, this town is still pretty shaken from what we saw yesterday. It quite frankly didn't matter if you lived a block away from the Capitol or if you lived in Buffalo, New York. Those images were just shocking, and they're images we're used to seeing halfway around the world. But yesterday afternoon, it was our country that was full of these rioters, these protesters, domestic terrorists, as Senator Chuck Schumer referred to them on the Senate floor, and it really has rocked this city. The good news is that overnight, Congress sent a strong message around the world regarding democracy, and they certified the Electoral College victory for President-elect Joe Biden, and through a statement, we have the most solid concession yet from President Trump. I think, though, it will be very important for the country to hear from President Trump actually concede today. I quite frankly don't know, though, if that will happen.
You know, the president is promising a peaceful transition of power now. At least this is the first we're hearing this. Talk to us about that, Joe. What do you see happening as we move forward today, and what do we see as far as the inauguration goes? You know,
24 hours ago, you would have been betting that President Trump wouldn't attend the inauguration, wouldn't participate in any of the activities on January 20th. Does this change his mind? Is he forced to? Does he have a moment, an American moment, where he says, all right, I wasn't going to do this, but after yesterday, maybe I will in fact show up to the inauguration? We just don't know. Maybe he won't continue to show up to the inauguration. Maybe he won't invite President-elect Joe Biden to the White House. I will say this. What happened yesterday at the United States Capitol building was, as you said, the biggest security breach since the War of 1812. How's that for some perspective? And there is going to be a lot of finger pointing, blaming in the next few days and weeks regarding how this could happen, how the Capitol Police could let this happen. And as you said, we have an inauguration that's supposed to take place on the west steps of the U.S. Capitol. It will take place in the west steps of the U.S. Capitol January 20th. What will security look like for that? It will be ramped up, no doubt, following yesterday's events.
You know, Joe, overnight, the president said in a statement through his press secretary in the tweet that Katie was just referencing about an orderly transition of power on January 20th. He continued on in his tweet and said, while this represents the end of the greatest first term in presidential history, it's only the beginning of our fight to make America great again. So you've got that compared to what President-elect Joe Biden says about how words can inspire and should not incite. So are we still getting these mixed messages from the president with mere days left before the end of his presidency?
Yes, we're getting mixed messages, and it was mixed messages that resulted in what we saw yesterday. President Trump's sons encouraging people to rise up, people to come to D.C. President Trump encouraging people from all corners of the country to use their hard-earned money and fly across the country to be here. Remember, these weren't Washingtonians at the U.S. Capitol yesterday. These were people who traveled from all over the United States. So yes, mixed messages is what we're receiving from the White House. And if this country is going to come together, there needs to be a clear unifying message. But I'll be honest with you, this isn't going to change like that.
Right.
Just because Joe Biden will be president on January 20th. 20th doesn't mean the division will end.
You know, Joe, I just wanted to ask you one more thing. Our congressman from Buffalo, Brian Higgins, saying overnight he's wondering to what degree some of his colleagues might be held responsible here. What's the conversation as far as that goes in the Capitol?
You're right. I mean, I think there's a lot of question regarding how did the objections by these senators, by these members of the House, was that the catalyst that created all of this? I mean, look, there's going to be, as we said, a lot of blaming. There are some Democrats on Capitol Hill this morning that want a censure. They want impeachment for the president. There are those who want the 25th Amendment to be invoked, which, for those that don't have their pocket constitution handy, would basically requires a majority of the cabinet to remove the president from office and hand over his presidential powers for the remainder of his term to Vice President Mike Pence. Look, I think today will be critical in answering the question of what happens next. To some degree, it's in the president's hand. Does he try to rise up and unite this country finally after 4 years, or will it be much of the same?
Many questions, of course, that still remain to be answered. Joe, thank you.